and welcome to Gigantic Interview, sponsored by GG Unleashed, of course, the awesome website. You can get all your information for gigantic, ggunleashed.com. I am joined in the Each Virtual Studio by, I am on the wrong one moment here. There we go. Okay. There he is. There's Mr. Ted. How are you, sir?
Awesome. How are you guys doing?
Good, good. I'm doing very well, and you know it's really fun to kind of be able to interview you guys because you guys are so laid back, and it's not like that the whole pressure type of thing. You're just like, okay, cool. We're gonna chat for 5.5 hours about just your personal life and everything else. So, and I believe that was the first Nerf dart, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was the CEO that threw that at me.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh boy, did I mess up the title card? I think I did. That's okay. So as we're talking, we I just realized that I'm using the wrong title card and I can't change it unless I open Photoshop up. So yeah, I apologize. So we're gonna do that. But Ted, tell me about yourself a little bit. I know that you had a lot to do with the character designs since you were one of the artists on Motiga. And do you enjoy your job? And what is what is your favorite aspect about being a character artist?
Character artist in general,
Yes.
it's hard to describe. I was kind of drawn to it all along, and it just sort of feels natural for me to work on characters. But I've done character and environment art in my career.
All right.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're okay,
The
man. You're okay.
No, I've been at Motiga since basically we started working on Gigantic as it stands right now.
Hmm.
Since we started nailing down the art style, and the art style we work with is kind of the style I did in my free time. So before Motiga, I was a freelancer and I worked in all different styles, and from like Call of Duty realism to cartoony pixel art and
Okay.
everything in between. And in my free time, I would do a lot of ZBrush modeling and stuff just for fun. And I heard about Motiga through a friend that had seen my art that worked here already. And the stuff I do in my free time, or I did in my free time, was pretty much right in line with what they wanted to do with the characters here.
Hmm.
And so I just kind of get to work in my favorite style. And
Awesome.
yeah, when I started, we didn't really have the style figured out. And it was kind of up to me and the only other character artist at the time and our one concept artist to just explore and figure out what we were doing. And yeah, basically ended up with the style that I would prefer most to do for fun. And I just do that all day here, which is pretty
Awesome.
great.
Well, you know what? It's nice to kind of see you in your natural element, if you were. And I know that we have a lot of questions for you. So I think I'd like to start with off kind of how did you start off in gaming, and what is your history in the genre itself? Not only your career, but just kind of like playing video games, and what got you into those?
Uh, like pretty much everybody else, the games in my generation, I started off with, Nintendo, Sega Genesis, that era as a kid, and just grew up gaming. But I don't think I was really a gamer until maybe in middle school, and I was
Wow.
playing a lot of networked marathon at school with a bunch of people. Like
Okay.
OG Marathon was, in my world, the first multiplayer game I ever played.
Hmm.
And that's what really grabbed me to become a gamer, because it became a social activity instead of just like something to do for fun in my spare time. It actually became like a reason to hang out with friends.
Okay.
And then that kind of led back into me playing a lot more games that I played in my spare time, like Diablo 2 and StarCraft and stuff that I would kind of do alone. But what did you mean by genre?
Okay, so like everyone kind of has like their favorite genre of game, like first person shooter, RPG, MMORPG, adventure, racing, that kind of stuff. So what is your particular favorite, and what seems to like draw you into those style of games?
That's changed a lot, I think.
Always does.
I
Always
mean,
does.
Jesus, I've been a gamer for like over 15, maybe like 20 years now, so it's plenty of time to kind of evolve a bit. But I'd say right now my favorite style of game, or at least the one that sticks with me most, is turn-based or real-time strategy games, but really slow real-time strategy. Like, I think Dwarf Fortress is the game that I've stuck with for
Okay.
the longest. Or, I'm sorry, not Dwarf Fortress, No Moria, which is kind of based off Dwarf Fortress.
Awesome. Now, are you a Final Fantasy guy at all?
Used to be. I mean, like most people, 7 was kind of the pinnacle of the series for me.
Okay.
I played like FF2 way back when, but Final Fantasy, yeah, I did RPGs. Diablo 2, Diablo 1 and 2 kind of led me into games like Fallout, and that sucked me in for a long time. I went through a pretty serious shooter phase. When Half-Life 1 came out, I started playing just vanilla Half-Life multiplayer with friends over our home LAN.
Awesome
And,
game. Love that game.
oh yeah,
So
and
good.
that turned into Counter-Strike, and that was probably the most intensely I've ever gamed.
Okay.
Was
All right.
deep Counter-Strike.
So you never got like super hyper competitive. You were just kind of like playing like really kind of intense with your friends then.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a small town, and we had 56K internet for way longer than most of the world, so it wasn't really an option to be competitive. But in LAN parties and casual online was pretty much where it was at for me.
Biggest of Plays wants to know if you got on to the Wasteland 2 hype.
I got onto it like early before it was really playable by the general public, and it was just like early in the Kickstarter I think they were doing for it.
Okay.
I thought it looked cool, but I had never played the original Wasteland, and so I thought it looked really cool, but I didn't have any experience with the series.
Okay. Cool. Very cool. Now my question is, did you play Gauntlet growing up as a kid at all?
Oh yeah.
Do you have the new Gauntlet, and are you excited for it?
No, I saw it at PAX, and I was excited for it before I saw the art style, but
Okay.
I've become kind of a
An art
dick about art
snab.
in games. Yeah, a little bit of an art snob.
Okay, cool.
I only have so much time to play games, and at
Yeah.
this point, I reserve it for the ones that grab me, like
Of
at the
course.
very top tier of that. And if the art style doesn't do it, then that's a big part of the experience that I can't enjoy.
Fair enough. Which actually leads us to a segue question. What is your favorite art style for a video game?
Like a video game that's a good example.
Just in general, like what, kind of like comparing Guild Wars 2 to World of Warcraft. Like, do you go for more of like the cartoony style graphics, or do you go more for the realism?
In general, I've kind of bounced back and forth. I think overall, I probably go for cartoony, a little bit cartoony. But I mean, I've loved a really big array of games. Like Rez has one of my favorite art styles,
Okay.
but that's only really because of how well it ties into the music of the game.
Right.
And that just became a really great experience for me. Or like Shadow of the Colossus is a very bleak, different brown game in style, but just they pull off the atmosphere, and that bleak style is done so well that it's still one of the most powerful experiences I've ever had in gaming, even though it's, as opposed to like Journey, which I haven't played, but I've watched be played a lot. It has a really strong art style and also pulls you in, but is kind of the opposite end of the spectrum when it comes to like strong colors and shapes and realism. They're both on
Okay.
slightly different areas.
Now, go ahead.
I was
Go ahead.
say, oh yeah, Mirror's Edge was another game that was way out there stylistically for me, but just because the whole thing was done so well, it was a really beautiful experience. So I probably couldn't choose one particular style as long as it's done well. And actually, I would say it's if the style is really focused and strong, like Mirror's Edge was kind of this realistic but like minimalist realism. So it was realistic, but it was also very like surreal and dreamlike at the same time. But it was just done so well and so cohesively that the world would just envelop you. And that's kind of what I look for, is like really focused, just well done in every aspect art. And it could be of any particular style as long as it's just strong and really intentional, as opposed to like Call of Duty, which is just make it realistic.
Right.
And
Okay,
there's
so-
not really any bounds on that.
So it sounds like as long as the game kind of draws you in, it doesn't really matter what kind of the art style is. It's more of as long as it's a good game type of thing.
As long as the art style is done intentionally. I was trying to think of a good example of a Call of Duty style game that was actually done really, really well, but I can't come up with one off the top of my head. But
Yeah, there's really no good examples for that one.
yeah.
Now, in kind of along the lines with that question, did multiplayer gaming change the way that you looked at video games as a whole, or did your opinion about video games kind of remain the same?
It's changed throughout my life. I mean, my very first games were like Sega Genesis, Mortal Kombat, early multiplayer games, and like I said, marathon multiplayer pulled me in pretty deep. And but right now I'm playing No Moria, which is like about as single player as you can get. Just days and days and days single player, not even a story just to hold you in. And it really, I think it just comes down to where my life is at. Like right now, I really love just being able to go home and relax and play an hour and maintain my little gnome fortress. But in the past, come home after school and spend 4 or 5, 7 hours just jamming online with a bunch of people, murdering people or questing together or something. It just depends on, my energy levels when I'm gaming and how much time I have to game.
Cool. Well, I mean, multiplayer has definitely affected people definitely differently, and in terms of lifestyle, it definitely is something that I think really kind of speaks to all of us because, as you said, you have your own lifestyle to maintain, and you only have an hour or so a day of free time or whatever you want to call it. So, has that impacted your I don't want to say artistic ability on video games, but has that impacted your view and how you actually do your art in terms of the way you design a certain piece or the way you color a certain piece?
You mean like the games I play or the multiplayer aspect
Yes.
of games?
Yeah.
Well, multiplayer definitely it's really important to have the best, most accurate information you can, especially when it's a Twitch-based shooter and you need to be able to tell how far away somebody is, what type of character they are, all that kind of stuff. So, in a functional standpoint, that's obviously really important. But as far as just the gameplay really affecting style choices, not so much. I think that just more causes me to want to focus things and make sure that you're getting across the information that is only really important and not too much extra information. But that's more of a execution level thing, I guess.
Okay. Cool. That was Dax the Destroyer's question, so thanks for answering that. I appreciate that.
I hope that wasn't too meandering.
No, it was a very good answer. Now, is there any game that you rode the hype train for, and did it live up to that hype? Like, say, Destiny or Dragon Age or World of Warcraft, or just it can be any game, new or old.
It might be a little bit of a blast from the past, though. I'm gonna have to go with Heroes of Might and Magic 2.
Wow. Okay.
I still remember sitting in the back seat of my mom's car, driving back from the mall, which is like an hour and a half away from our house at the time. So just like pouring over. It had like the box when they had boxes for games, and just like opening the sheet with all the little different creature types and their stats and the different types of castles and heroes that you could have, and just that whole car ride is still a vivid memory for me.
That's
even though
awesome.
it was like a million years ago. But I was really excited about that game, and it totally paid off. Still one of the best games ever for me.
That's awesome. I mean, honestly, I miss the whole boxes for games because I actually have them all kind of on my wall hanging up because you get that sense of this is yours. You actually own a piece of history type of thing.
I know.
And it was really weird because WildStar was the first game that I bought digitally. Normally, that because if you buy a game off Steam, then there's no boxes. But if you have the option to, it's still really weird to just be like, okay, I'm just going to install it from online. So I miss the whole box thing, and you're definitely right about that. Zeta, we're not doing any questions related to the game itself. This is questions just related to Ted and him being a character artist at Motiga. So that question would have to be saved for a later stream. I do apologize. Next question that I wanted to go over. When you look at a design for a character, what makes them stand out to you?
In general, I'm gonna have to say expressiveness and emotiveness for characters. There's been a ton of really great character design in games, but the one thing that we're only now just really starting to see, and little peppered here and there throughout gaming history, but a character that isn't just like a list of attributes and descriptions and visual, adjectives to describe their outfit and their bone structure and all that, but actually like a character that has, when you look at him, you see a personality in there. Mass Effect had a few characters like this. I think it was Liara, the girl with the purple skin girl with the squid hair.
Yeah, the one that had psychic powers and was like, I don't want to do this, but I have to. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, her personality wasn't exactly what I would have expected from looking at her, but she just had like you looked at her and there was a character there, not just like an alien chick in armor.
Okay.
And I think even the main character in Shadow of the Colossus is kind of an interesting example of that because I don't even remember what he looked like, but I just remember he had like a scarf or a cape and he rode his horse around and just the way he was presented in the environment and the way, even though he was a very simplistic character and almost just a silhouette in a lot of ways,
Hmm.
just the way the whole package was put together, like you were so sympathetic and
Right.
he was just your avatar on a level that isn't really common anymore, and the game was able to really make you feel certain ways through that experience, which a lot of games still have trouble with doing. But
Right.
there's a studio, they're the guys that made like Heavy Rain, I forget the
Okay.
name, but they've been doing a lot of stuff with like facial motion capture and bringing that into games. They have a lot of really cool tech demos where they're actually like getting the full range of facial expression into characters, and I think was it Last of Us had some really good character rig going on, so that it wasn't just a character or a story. It was actually like a person that had emotions, and they didn't have to say what they were feeling for you to know what they were feeling and to feel the same way, hopefully, that they did.
We have another question here from chat from Zeto, Zetoa. I'm probably butchering that, but they ask, what's the challenge of designing non-human characters for Gigantic?
It's a good question. You know, I mean, most of our characters, I don't know most, but a good portion of them aren't human, and there's a lot you can do to express a personality that you don't really need a human face to do. And I
True.
didn't really think about it a whole lot before I started working here because pretty much everything I'd done professionally in the past had been humanoid characters or creatures, which weren't trying to be characters. They were just trying to be fauna in the environment anyway. But there's just a lot of you do a lot more big shape language, like Tank, for example, is he doesn't really have a face, but his personality is this big, dark, scary, mean character.
So Darth Vader, basically.
Yeah, except a lot more like if Darth Vader played football or something. If Darth Vader
That'd
was
be
a linebacker.
amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, that needs to be a skin right there, but that would probably infringe on so many copyrights, so you can't
Well,
do that.
maybe down the road.
Maybe down the road.
But yeah, we used typical character attributes to make him feel that way, even though he doesn't have a face. So we
Okay.
just kind of try and do stuff like that that fits into whatever category. Like Charnock is his whole other thing.
Okay, cool, very nice. So kind of in relation to that, if you could be any gaming character in any game, who would it be and why?
That's an interesting question. Trying to think. Honestly, that off the top of my head, I'm gonna have to go with the main character from Infamous Second Son, just because it just looks like it'd be really fun to run around and shoot lightning from your hands and fly and explode and turn into fire and basically be invincible and also an elemental and also fly. Sounds pretty rad. It sounds like a really great dream, honestly.
Okay, all
But
right.
I haven't played the game enough to know how much he gets his ass kicked, so I don't know if I would want to be that part.
Gotcha, understandable. Jazzy, I'd love to answer that question, but that's a slightly too specific, and that's something that I'd have to clear through certain channels to ask that question. So, good question though, but just to hold on to that for another stream. Next question that I want to kind of ask you is, what was your worst job growing up? Be, scrubbing elephant poo out of the carnival bin. I don't know, but like it can be anything, even if it wasn't gaming related.
Uh, Circuit City. This is not an interesting question or answer at all, but yeah,
Doesn't
it's
have to be
Circuit City
interesting.
for all the reasons you would assume. Just the mission there was just to do as little work as possible to get my paycheck and leave.
That
was pretty
sounds
much
that
it.
sounds like. Now I assume that was a job when you were a teenager. Then.
That was actually post college while I
Oh
was
wow.
doing a lot of I was working on indie games that were unpaid in my free time, and so I had to pay rent. I worked at 7-Eleven and Circuit City at the same time, but 7-Eleven was actually a pretty rad job because I just stocked drinks and it was like a giant 3D game of Tetris that I got to play for 4 hours. So I just stayed in the back and did that, and that was actually kind of
Nice.
satisfying in a weird
Nice.
way.
Hey, guys, just a quick clarification in chat. We are asking specific questions about Ted, not the game itself, and not his processes in development. That is not what this interview is for. So we will have those eventually, but for now, try and keep your questions more related to his career, artist questions, and non-gigantic specific questions. So moving on. The reason I asked the career question is, as an artist, did the game Journey speak to you emotionally, and more so than it would someone that's not an artist? I know you said that you haven't actually played it, but you've watched playthroughs.
Yeah.
So do you think that that might have affected your opinion at all?
Yeah, I definitely have wanted to play it for a long time, but it's the kind of game where I feel like if I play it, I want to sit down for like a day and just play that game.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have a console. I pretty much only game on my computer.
PC
So
Master Race.
I love it, but something to be said for playing something like Journey on a TV, you know?
Okay.
Like a big proper immersive experience. And from what I saw, they did a really awesome job, pretty much across the board. But I haven't really experienced it personally yet.
Okay, do you think that you would be more affected by it, though, since you are an artist and you might be able to catch more details than, say, someone like me who can't draw a circle to save his life?
Maybe. I mean, honestly, when I play games, especially like that, where I really want to experience it, I try to turn that off. You know, try to turn off the art critic in me because just like watching movies, I can totally watch a sci-fi and pick it apart, but that's no fun for anybody.
Right.
And I would probably play Journey as a gamer and then as an artist, but preferably not at the same time.
Okay. Let's see here. Avid Guru from chat would like to know how many cities have you moved to for your career?
You know, none actually. I grew up in Washington. I moved to Seattle for college, and all of my studio jobs have been here. And I did
Wow.
move between. I lived in Yosemite and Salt Lake City while I was freelancing, but the places that I lived were just the places I wanted to live. They had nothing to do with my job since I was freelancing. I could live anywhere.
Okay, very cool.
So I've been very lucky in that way.
Nice. Now, have you ever wanted to move to a different state? Is there like a state that you've like really wanted to live at?
Utah was one, and I accomplished that dream a couple winters in a row. I went there to snowboard while I freelanced, but
Nice.
Alaska looks surprisingly awesome just because of all the wilderness. I really like to backpack and
Okay,
hike
cool.
and that kind of stuff. I've heard Montana's really, really pretty. I wouldn't mind visiting there. I don't know about moving there. I really like living near the ocean. But as long as I have mountains or ocean is usually enough.
Okay.
I lived in California for a while, like Southern California, and that was not good for me.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. It seems California is just full of just awesome people, but that's
It's
okay.
just,
My
that's not that the people are bad, it's just there's too many of them.
my sister lives there, and she says the exact same thing. So, okay. So, as an artist, was there any unexpected character designs that have stuck with you in your career? Like something that you've done that like really was successful, or something that you saw in a different game and was like, wow, that's just a fantastic idea, or like really memorable.
Yeah, there's one off the top of my head, which I thought of earlier. Is not really a strong like character, but the Horned Reaper from Dungeon Keeper.
Okay.
Just because I don't know why of all the cool character designs, just this one sticks out, but he's so simple. It's just he's crazy. He's
Yes.
a crazy demon, and that's it. And he's so crazy that he can't close his mouth. Like his lips in all the pictures are just like just this giant spiky grin on his face, and he's built so that he can't not have a giant toothy grin. Like his mouth can't close. And I thought that was really awesome that he's that crazy he can't close his mouth.
Nice. All right. That's
pretty
actually
random.
a very, very good example because I never thought of it that way. And I learned something today. I like that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Liam from chat wants to know what were some of your greatest artistic influences as you were growing up and developing your art style?
That is an interesting and a really good question. Man, I'd say I can only really say early on in life, it was kind of the usual like Looney Tunes, Disney movies types of stuff. I didn't read comics when I was younger. There wasn't actually a comic book store in my town, so that wasn't even an option for me.
Hmm.
Anime, I got into anime kind of early on, but it wasn't particularly good anime. It was just like, I was a nerdy kid, and that's what the nerdy kids did is they watched anime, and so
Dragon
that's how I
Ball
got into that.
Z.
These days, however, pretty big fan of all the stuff that Studio 4C has put out in anime. Tech on King Crete was really, really important for me. Just, oh man, the colors and the complexity in that movie, and just the way that shapes distort when people move. And I think probably 4 or 5 years ago is when I really started getting into really colorful, bright stuff. Graffiti is a big inspiration for me because people
Okay.
just the most insane, even
Yeah.
like really highly rendered 3D shapes is like people in graffiti on the sides of trains push 3D shapes and color harder than most professionals will with like a proper professional 3D suite.
Yeah.
And it's that's been really inspirational to me just to see all the crazy stuff people do. I got into spray paint. I'm still into that.
That's
It's
awesome.
it's the biggest canvas you can really work on quickly and still do like gestural motion
Hmm.
and stuff. And when I do art in my free time, I do a lot of painting and spray paint and stuff. It's just
That's awesome, dude.
quick motions, very sketch-like stuff, and just it's really really satisfying to be able to just like basically stream of consciousness
Hmm.
make art, and that's the best big medium for that.
Now,
Um,
my dad used to do airbrush art. He was an art major in college. Do you do dabble in that at all, or is it just mainly spray paint type of art?
it's mainly spray paint right now, but
Okay.
that's definitely at the top of the list because a lot of the really cool muralists that I admire, they do 90% of their work with spray paint, and then they come in with the airbrush later to like, really refine the edges and the corners because spray paint isn't always the best fine grain instrument.
Okay, okay.
But
For everyone new in chat, we are only answering questions that pertain to Mr. Ted and his artistic career. And as a character designer, we're not going to be going into anything specific about the game Gigantic itself. All very good questions have been asked for the game itself, but that will be answered later on another stream where we are allowed to talk about those things. So, moving right along. Um, why did you pick your career, and what was the one thing that pointed you in that direction?
um, so I got into 3D in middle school, like 3D Studio Max 2. I
Oh
don't know,
wow.
but like right, like a one or two versions after it stopped being text based, and I just did that for fun. I don't even remember what triggered me to looking into it, but a few years after just kind of doing that for fun in my free time, not making game specific stuff, just making 3D stuff. I went to a technology camp in maybe eighth grade in like Texas, and the whole
Okay.
thing was a total ripoff. It was basically just a money grubbing scheme to get cash from middle-aged nerd parents.
Oh, that's depressing.
Yeah, but I looked out while I was down there. They were trying to come up with stuff to do to justify our being there, and there was a
Ooh.
small group they were going to take to Digital Anvil. I think
Oh,
that's what it
that's
was
so
called.
cool.
Yeah, and I just happened like out of maybe 2,000 kids to I just lucked out, draw of the hat. My name came up for like the 15-person group that got to go to
Oh,
Digital
that's
Anvil.
awesome.
And we got to spend the day there talking to the artists, talking to the game designers, just hanging out and seeing what they did. And that was the point at which I realized, hey, this is actually a thing I can do. Because I hadn't even really thought about like that as an option in my life, and that was a sustainable career.
Hmm.
And that was the first time I actually saw it happen, like other people that had made that happen, and seeing that they were still very much the kind of person I wanted to be in the future. And that was the point at which I probably started really thinking seriously about what do I need to do to kind of make this happen for me.
Cool. Well, that's awesome. I mean, is Digital Anvil still around?
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
after Freelancer they closed.
That game was so good.
Yeah,
You know what? My original CD broke like 6 months ago. I was so angry. I was like,
that's, tr-
no.
that's tragic. It's probably on
Ah.
Good Old Games.
Oh, I'm sure it is. Yeah. I'm actually in the process of going to. I'm going to be framing that because that was still probably one of my favorite games of all time in terms of like old school gaming. It's such a good game.
Hmm.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, okay. So, regards to your career, what was your first job in the gaming industry? Was it an artist job or were you cleaning toilets?
Depends on, are you talking about getting paid or just working on a game of any kind?
You can do both, actually.
Well, I worked on a game that actually relatively recently finally launched that I worked on in 2002, which was um, oh no, it's by Reverie World Entertainment is what they're called, and it's like this MMO RTS game. Oh no, Dawn of Fantasy, that's what it is. And I totally thought it was gonna die, and I don't know, it might actually be a fun game now. I haven't played it. I haven't had anything to do with it for like over a decade, but that was the first game I worked on for free. My first
The website's still up.
Yeah, no, it's actually I recently one of my old friends that worked on it with me sent me a link and that apparently it happened and that it's open and people are playing it and people are liking it. So that's really
It's
cool.
cool.
But
Very
my
nice.
first paid job was at an Al Lowe studio, the guy that made Leisure Suit Larry.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
and I was a character artist there, and that was my first in-house paid studio job. And that studio was clearly circling the drain from day one. And I was there for maybe a year and a half before they finally closed, and my last paycheck was whatever I could carry out of the office. But
Ouch.
there was a year and a half of good experience working with a lot of professionals and kind of getting my feet on the ground without too much pressure. It was one of the nice things about joining a studio that didn't know what it was doing is I was able to explore more than I probably would have been able to at a bigger studio. So,
Okay.
but that was actually coincidentally the office park that Motiga just moved into is the same office park where that studio was.
Really?
So it's really weird being back here actually
So
because
you know
it's
all
not
the secret hideouts and secret bathrooms, right?
yeah, the secret bathrooms. Yeah, yeah. You mean the corner in the hall?
Yep. That's awesome. Liam in chat wants to know what's the best thing to you do to get your creative flow going?
Creative flow. Just just sitting down and putting pencil to paper or stylus to tablet or whatever, and just do this if I have to, and just make shapes. A lot of my favorite paintings or drawings that I've done from the past were just started out with just random. What am I feeling? And then a shape shows up in one part. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool, and maybe erase a couple lines and just build out from there. I'm a big fan of not thinking hard about what I'm going to draw
Hmm.
or sculpt when I start, and I just kind of let it kind of grow out of itself. Because if I try to think about it too much beforehand, I just end up kind of paralyzed at the planning stage.
Yeah.
And then
Too
even if
much
I do
thinking
make
is
it,
always bad.
yeah, and then it just ends up kind of stiff and limited feeling. But if I just kind of let my hand go where it wants, I can get a lot of cool shapes in there that normally would seem kind of like, oh, that's too far. You can't do that with the rest of this stuff.
Hmm. Awesome.
But
Okay.
yeah.
All right. I mean, I think that's really any creative person's kind of
Yeah.
like kryptonite is they think about it too much and then they're like, okay, now I don't know what to actually get started with. Because a buddy of mine just graduated from college for 3D animation, and he says he just starts with something and doesn't really think about it. So you pretty much confirmed that it's better to just go with it and erase mistakes and just keep going. So
That was one of the biggest things that I learned in school accidentally was I went to DigiPen and
okay.
we had a weekly sketchbook assignment that was 50 pages a week for the
Oh
2 years
my!
I was there. And
Wow.
you can't think about stuff when you're doing 50 pages a week. It's just sketch, just do it. It doesn't matter if you draw like garbage or if you draw people or toilets or anything. It's just getting that muscle memory in there so that when you do feel like you want to draw something, you don't even have to worry about opening the floodgates because you ripped them out long ago. And just that circuit from brain to hand is just so natural and second nature to you that it's not like a thing you choose to do. It's just like, am I going to put a pencil in my hand? And then the rest you don't even have to think about.
Awesome.
So just forcing yourself to do it sounds kind of lame, but it's actually one of the best things I learned how to do.
Awesome. Cool. So now in terms of the gaming industry, how did you hear about Motiga, and was there any special assignments that you sent them to get you hired in?
Um, Actually, I hadn't heard about Motiga. My friend Joe, who's the character lead here, was the first character artist
Hmm.
at Motiga over almost 2 years ago now, and he reached out to me when they were looking to get another character artist because me and him had known each other previously through a website called Polycount and just local things. We're both Seattle game artists, so we kind of knew each other. And he knew my style and knew that they wanted to take the game in sort of a colorful, stylized direction. And just hit me up and said, "You looking for work?" And they looked. My portfolio is most of it, I'd say half of it is just free time sculpts that I've done in ZBrush, just for fun art that shows my own personal style. And yeah, I guess they just looked at that. Everybody on the team checked out my website, and then they just talked to me to make sure I would be okay to work with. And I guess that the art I had in my portfolio was close enough to what they wanted that they didn't art test me or anything.
Okay, awesome. Now, in terms of working for Motiga, I know you are a character artist, but is there anything specifically that you work on, or is it just mainly the characters?
It's mainly the characters, and all that includes, like weapons, and I help with design, and we all kind of wear a lot of different hats. Where there's not a whole lot of this is your one job. If you want to go do, or at least help with critiquing some other part of the game that's not necessarily in your jurisdiction, you're totally welcome to. But I haven't like modeled anything for the environment art side of things at Motiga or anything like that.
All right. Now, we have one last question for you, but before I get to that, I want to give the chat a couple minutes to ask some more questions. Guys, keep in mind that these need to be related to Ted and his artistic career, and not specifically related to in-game things for Gigantic or things that he might be working on for the game. So go ahead and type your questions in chat, and I'll get to them. While that's going on, Ted, I wanted to kind of talk to you a little bit about the art aesthetic. In terms of, I guess, the way that you guys picked for the game. I mean, obviously it's very, very beautiful, and the colors are just fantastic. They pop out at you. Is this the first time you've ever worked on a game that has this style of art?
Yeah, professionally. Pretty much most of the other stuff I worked on was to some degree realistic. I think I've done like little odds and ends here for like indie games where I do a one-off asset, but for actual larger, actually no, just remembered I worked on Firefall. When I was freelancing, I did some props for Firefall, and that was probably the first time I'd actually worked on a heavily stylized game. So that was really fun. Unfortunately, I just did environment art. I didn't get to work on the characters.
Hey, the environment of Firefall is fantastic, so you did a great job.
Well, thank you.
You're very welcome. Now, in terms of the realism art, is that a lot more in depth than, say, something like Gigantic is? Because obviously you have to go into a lot more detail, or is it the completely other way around? You have to go into more detail because of the art style is a little bit more limited in games like Gigantic.
It's different. I mean, obviously it's different, but there's a lot more like noodling that you do in realistic stuff because there's everything has a finer texture. You got to do the cloth has to have the little like cloth texture on there, so you have to go to a much just the higher level of detail there. Whereas most of the work for Gigantic comes in on defining the shapes in a larger way, and then how color and all those things interact to kind of define things. But the amount of time it takes to make a character is exactly the same. It's just kind of where you put your time, and the Gigantic style is not difficult to do. It's just a different focus, and I think most artists are aware of the things that you need to focus on to do that, and it's just a matter of shifting gears into what you're really thinking about first and foremost when you start a character. A realistic character is much more, you just make a human with normal human proportions, and then make a t-shirt, and then the things that make that are already established by nature, whereas in Motiga, or in Gigantic's characters, there's a lot more is up to us.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Now, a couple questions from chat. K1SHI, so I'm assuming it's Kishi, wants to know where can they find some of your other work? Do you have like a portfolio online or anything? Or
I would have said CG Hub, but it doesn't exist anymore. The portfolio I have is thanks to Simpsons for this, monkeyknifefights.com.
That's amazing. All right, cool.
Yeah,
cool.
Monkey Knife Fights, and yeah, I haven't updated it since I started working here, so it's over 2 years old at this point. But that's probably the only real repository of work I have online right now.
Okay, cool. Kish, if you're gonna name yourself Kish and you're Locksmith, name yourself Locksmith. You crazy cooligan. Jeez.
You tell.
Yeah, I know, right? Zeta Omega Gaming wants to know, Ted, if you could only draw one art style for the rest of your life, what style would that be?
Let's see. I'm gonna choose painting because that's what I do the most in my free time now. And then the stylistically, very very colorful, almost graffiti style stuff.
Hmm.
Just all color, very little black, very little white, like just just explosions of color, high energy, just engaging, excited art has really been my jam lately.
Okay. Now, in terms of style, what is the art for Gigantic actually categorized? Is it cell shaded? Is that the official term for the art style? Because there's so many different art styles for that style of art. It's I almost just want to say it's cell shaded and just leave it at that. But do you guys have you like actually defined it yourself?
Cell shaded is a term that gets talked about a lot, and I've heard different definitions for it. Personally, cell shaded to me is outlines on things, and it's sort of, Borderlands is a pretty decent example of the principles of cell shading in terms of just black outlines, simple colors. The one thing we get from cell shading in our game is the sort of two-tone shadows we do, where we actually define the shaded side and the light side in the textures as opposed to letting the lighting do it on
Okay.
its own. And so that kind of gives us more control over how shadows and light are treated, which is much more of a cell shading sort of a thing. But since we don't have outlines on characters and there's some other things that we do differently, I would say we're not cell shaded, but that's a subjective opinion, I think.
Okay, cool. All right, cool. I appreciate you answering that. All right, so the last question and probably the most important question I'm sure everyone's wanting to know is in your team profile page, I see that you are a professional breakfast eater. What is the best breakfast food, and can you cook a good breakfast?
I can cook an amazing eggs over medium and toast, but
Ooh, okay.
no, I really, really value a good breakfast. It's the only meal where I really savor it.
Okay. Yeah,
It's
that's
the,
very fair.
they say it's the most important meal of the day, and I'd be inclined to agree. It's the only meal I could eat at any time during the day and love it.
I mean,
Like,
who doesn't want pancakes at 3 o'clock in the morning? I mean, come on.
I'm saying, I'm saying. But
Oh man, that's awesome.
you know what? I've been slacking on my breakfast eating lately. Thank you for bringing that up.
You're welcome. Now, do you have a favorite breakfast food, or do you just kind of consume any breakfast food that's kind of put in front of you?
Well, definitely the latter, but depending on my mood, if I'm hungover, I'll take a biscuits and gravy. If I don't have a lot of time and I just want a light breakfast because I got to go do a bunch of stuff, I'll just do a couple eggs over medium and toast.
Okay.
It's really good. But there's a breakfast for every mood, you know?
It's very true. It's very true. Now, is there a favorite restaurant that you go and get your breakfast from time to time?
I would say there's a lot, but there's a place in Seattle called St. Cloud's in uh, Madison
Hmm.
or Magnolia. I forget. Anyway, excellent brunch spot. If you live in Seattle, I highly recommend checking out St. Cloud's.
Sweet, awesome, awesome. Well, Ted, we are at the end of our questions, and I'm gonna give this time for you to shout out anything that you'd like to plug, social media, anything that we can get in contact with you with via Gigantic and Motiga.
Honestly, I think my website has my email address if you really just feel a pressing need to talk to me. But otherwise, hi mom.
Hi, Mom. Now, okay, now one thing I will encourage you to do is get a Twitter, because you
I
need
don't
one. I need to
I don't
follow
know.
all the Motiga devs, and you
I'm,
don't have a Twitter.
that's because I'm a simple man, and I can barely handle like texting and talking on my phone, not at
Fair
the same
enough.
time,
Fair
even as
enough.
separate things to do on a phone. I've thought about getting Twitter, but it makes my brain hurt just thinking about it.
Hey, you know what? That's fair. Well,
I'm sorry.
no, it's okay. Just make one. Just never use it. That way, I can feel like I'm following another person of importance. So
Well, I'll hop on Troy's. So if you're following
okay,
Troy, you're following me.
awesome. All right, cool. Sounds good. I'm sure he'll appreciate that. Okay, so those of you wondering, the T-shirt will be given away based on your activity in chat, and the winner will be contacted via Twitch private messaging. I don't want to give the winner away over the live stream just so they don't get spammed with messages and everything. But if you are active in chat and you know who you are, you do definitely have a good chance of winning. I do appreciate everyone taking the time out of their busy day to come talk with Ted. And Ted, thank you very much for
Yeah, no
taking the
problem.
time out of your day to come talk with us and kind of getting to know you a little bit. As always, guys, follow Gigantic Unleashed on their website at ggunleashed.com. And Twitter and all that fun stuff as well. You know what? I want to end the interview by saying I'm looking forward to this game immensely, and honestly, the art style and the way that it's presented visually is what really drew me to the game, and obviously you have a big hand in that. So thank you very much for being a part of the art team. You guys have done a fantastic job.
Well, thanks.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So with that, guys, that's going to be the end of the interview. It will be uploaded shortly. I have to get to it before Twitch mutes it because I played music at the beginning. And Ted, thank you very much, and we will be with you guys whenever we do another one. So bye, guys.